Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit south node, square, opposition, or inconjunct one's natal Saturn. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve the south node in astrology, it could be about what we're going away from, the past, what you're naturally proficient in, even overdeveloped and redundant qualities. Now, when you have a transit south node basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Saturn, well, I'm going to elaborate on that. When I say basically adverse aspect, okay, squares and oppositions, those aspects in astrology are of course negative and adverse. Now the inconjunct aspect, though it's neutral, neutral aspects can have good and bad qualities in them, coupled with the fact that an inconjunct can often require an adjustment or a transition, and that of course can cause some exasperation and tension. So collectively, basically, I do see this as an adverse transit. But anyway, when you have transit south node basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Saturn, well, it could manifest in what you're going away from, the past, what you're trying to leave behind, what you may naturally be proficient or adept in, what you feel you are at this time, overdeveloped and redundant qualities. These qualities, may conflict, with the career, or that energy in general may conflict with their career. If somebody from your past has come around and they need your time, maybe this somehow conflicts with what you have to do in terms of your your position, your job. Say if the ascendant is in, if Saturn is in Libra, for example, it could be doing something with the law or arbitration or art that you may be doing as far as your career goes. It can also be where someone from the past may be challenging very hard work and labor, that needs to be done. If Saturn is in Pisces, for example, it could be hard work for the less fortunate, such as the oppressed, the hungry, or the homeless. Maybe it's prison work. I'm not saying for somebody that's imprisoned. I mean somebody that could be volunteering to do some work at a prison, as an example. And also to the things where, the South Node is also connected with the comfort zone, what you feel comfortable. It could be about where you're, complacency. And you might feel at this time, what you're naturally, what you're enjoying, perhaps even what you feel comfortable in, might be challenging. Perhaps your career in your any laborious work, or even responsibilities at this time. If the transit south node is in the zodiac sign Cancer, entered the fourth house, it could be simply home family related activities, introverted activities. If you have the transit south node in Cancer in the fifth house as an example, it might be family games like Twister. Some of you, people that can remember that, and I believe it's still out, but it came out a long time ago, that game. And older timers like myself can remember that game. Mercury in Cancer, I'm very nostalgic, I guess you could say. But anyway, the thing is, Saturn is also connected with the father, older people, and authority figures. So if you're trying to get away, from any of these people at this time, you're trying to get out of some activities with them, it might be harder to do so. Remember, the South Node reflects what we're going away from. And again, Saturn can be connected with the father, older people, authority figures. If there's responsibilities that need to be taken care of, if you're trying to extricate yourself from them somehow, it could be more difficult at this time to do so. And the thing is, what you feel, you may be naturally proficient at this time, what you're adept in. You might feel it might be challenging, what you want to do, in terms of your career and your livelihood at this time. So that's another way this transit can manifest. It can also be, anatomically speaking. Okay, Saturn is connected with the knees, the bones, the joints, the hamstrings, and the gallbladder. So if you're having any issues with them, if you have any of those physical related matters that I just described that's anatomically connected with Saturn, it could be harder to get away from them. It could be where the pain might be worse if you've been procrastinating in terms of going to a doctor or a hospital. It could be a time where you can't avoid that or avert that any longer. Now the thing is, when you have, like, say if this is in opposition, this transit of the South Node is opposing your natal Saturn, of course the North Node, the transit North Node, will be conjoining your natal Saturn. So that's really an indicator of those being issues that you may have to confront and address, that you really can't do anything about anymore. Saturn is also connected with chronic illnesses. So say if you have your natal Saturn in Virgo, there might be some physical issue, chronic problem connected with the spleen, the pancreas, the intestines, perhaps, that if you've hesitated or procrastinated on, there's no more of that at this point in time. That could be futile. So it's something where you might have no choice, because you may be getting away from those matters at this time. Now another thing too is that Saturn is also connected with restrictions and limitations. So if you haven't done anything in terms of working through your restrictions and limitations, it may be harder to avoid that at this point in time. Maybe there's something where you're dealing, it might be someone from your past, might be maybe conflicting with you, trying to deal with something that might be a limiting situation at this time in your life, a restricting situation at this point in time. And maybe somehow those things could be factoring into maybe having difficulty in doing things, with somebody that might have been prominent in your past. I mean, it could be, something, say if your natal Saturn is in the 12th house, maybe there is issues, of solitude and seclusion at this time. Maybe you're bearing, your sorrow and seclusion, and you don't really want to be part, of anybody, whether they're from your past or otherwise. Another thing too is that Saturn is also connected with aging. And the thing about it is, especially if you're an older person and you're having this transit, matters connected with aging could be something that may be unavoidable at this time. Again, going back to the fact that if you have this transit of the South Node making an opposition to your natal Saturn, that of course would put the transit North Node conjunct your natal Saturn. And those issues with aging could be unavoidable at this time. And it could even factor into you doing, having difficulty with people that were from your past, or doing things, with the South Node, you might feel, you're naturally proficient, you might actually be enjoying, and those things and the aging might simply be, adversely affecting that at this point in time. Now, Saturn is also about fears and inhibitions. And the thing about it is, if you haven't, confronted your fear, if you have any fears at this time that you feel are pretty powerful, they're prodigious, they're pretty big, it could be unavoidable. You may have no choice but to deal with it. It may be harder to get away from those things at this point in time, more so than usual. Now, another way this transit may manifest, it could be, again, someone from your past may adversely affect activities with the father and older people. Now, let's say if the transit South Node is in Sagittarius in the 7th house, as an example, it could be, person, maybe you were involved with sports, which is Sagittarius, which is competition, which is the 7th house. Could also be at the time of this transit, and maybe harder to get away, which is the South Node, get away from. It could be responsibilities, which is Saturn. And let's say, going back to natal Saturn in Virgo as an example. Let's say if the natal Saturn is in Virgo in the 11th house, it could be simply defragging or compartmentalizing, which is Virgo. It could be computers at this time, could be analyzing an astrology chart. I mean, Virgo is about analysis. 11th house can be connected with astrology. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, now another thing too is that something that may affect you to your detriment, maybe might challenge career-related matters at this time. Let's say if the transit South Node is in Capricorn in the 4th house, it could be something that's very depressing or limiting, which is Capricorn. In the home life, which is the 4th house. Now, what you feel comfortable doing, which is connected with the South Node, may conflict with you trying, with really at this time, with really doing things that maybe that you have no choice, your duties, your responsibilities at this point in time, and it's just something that it's something that you may have to deal with at this time. Again, I mean, adverse transits are I say it's basically an adverse transit for the reasons I stated at the beginning of the video. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.